Hey everyone, and welcome to Ask Firebase Live. I'm your host, Rachel Saunders, and I'm on the DevRel team here on Firebase, but I'm also here with a couple other Firebasers to answer all of your burning questions about Firebase, but especially those questions about things that we've launched over the last couple months, and even the things that you might have heard in the What's New in Firebase keynote that you hopefully just watched. But before we get started, let's find out who these other Firebasers are. So Chris, Jeff, want to introduce yourselves and tell us one thing that launched in the last couple months that you just loved.
Hey, my name is Chris Chestnut, and I'm a software engineer on the Firebase Crashlytics team. Super excited to be here for Ask Firebase Live. But as for my favorite new thing, I'm gonna have to say I'm thrilled to hear about Firebase's support for multiple Apple platforms. It's been one of the most requested features for Apple developers, and with support for tvOS and macOS, Firebase is delivering.
Yes, it is.
All right, and I'm Jeff. I'm also a member of the Firebase DevRel team. I'm coming to you from New Jersey. My favorite launch from the past few months has to be the V9 SDK of the Firebase JavaScript library. I think it's super exciting that we can make people's websites smaller and therefore faster. So yeah, excited to be here.
That's awesome. Hopefully we get some questions about some of those things later on the show. But where are all these questions, where did they come from? We've been collecting your questions from lots of different sources, but especially Twitter and any of those questions that were tagged with hashtag #AskFirebase. But we still want more questions. There is a live chat right now that's going on right now. You can ask your questions in that live chat. You'll get Firebasers to answer those questions. We might even pull some of those questions live on the show that Chris and Jeff and I might answer live here on the show. But definitely interact with that live chat and post your questions there. But let's go ahead and see what this first question might be. I'm going to bring up my question sheet and let's see what we got. All right, our first question, it's about Crashlytics. This team has been like on fire this year. So let's see what the first question might be is, all right, why does ANR reporting for Crashlytics only support devices running Android 11 or higher? Chris, I think you might be able to help us out with this since you're on that Crashlytics team.
Yeah, I can definitely take this one. That's a great question. I recently synced up with the engineers who developed this feature. While many devices are still running the older versions of Android, there was this decision going on to use the most reliable way forward. So there's an API that underlies this whole system, and that's what the team went with, rather than like SyncQuit or watchdog-based approaches. They went with something that's going to prepare customers for the future. So yeah.
Well, that's a good path forward. I guess we have to look forward to all those different when everyone does migrate to Android 11 and higher. We actually have another question about Crashlytics, Chris, but this one's about Unity. So kind of switching gears a little bit. But Marcus asks, I'm so excited about Crashlytics supporting IL2 CPP, but I'm not seeing any of my crashes for Android apps. Did IL2 CPP support actually launch? Now, I worked on that feature, so I think it did launch, but maybe you can tell us what might be happening with Marcus's apps.
Yeah, this is another great question. I think I can answer this one too. So iOS IL2 CPP support launched.
It's a mouthful,
right?
isn't it?
Every time. I practice saying it too, but it's going to catch me a couple times. That launched several weeks ago. But Android IL2 CPP support is what just launched. And there are 3 things you should probably do to your existing Android apps to get this support. 1, you'll need to update to the latest Unity SDK, at least 8.6.1 or higher. 2, you'll need to download the Firebase CLI. And there are docs on how to do this that we'll provide somewhere near this video. And 3, whenever you create a build for which you want to see symbolic stack traces in the Firebase console, you'll need to run the new Crashlytics command in the CLI to upload your symbol info. So check out the Getting Started with Crashlytics Unity documentation for more info there.
Great. And that's a really good point, Chris. You said like resources. We are going to be posting this video to our Firebase YouTube channel. And so those resources that Chris was just talking about, they will be posted in the description along with the video so that you can make sure that because it sounded like there were 3 things people really had to do to make sure that they were set up for this. So it's in those docs and in those resources. Let's see what else we have going on. All right, this question is about games. Again, it's about games, but not about Crashlytics. And this one is, what's the best way to model and design a transactional system for something like in-game currency? Anybody want to grab that one?
All right, I'm not a game developer, but I'll give this one a try.
All right, Jeff.
I think there's some broad kind of concepts that apply to any feature in an app that both requires you to be really accurate, like you don't want to miscount money, and also is a target for cheaters. People always want more money and maybe they don't want to follow the rules. So I think the first thing is to use transactions, as in the question. RealTime Database and Firestore both support transactions, and that's a way to do things atomically, so all at once. So maybe, take some money out of one person's account and put it in another person's account all at once so that you don't accidentally, pull money out, but then the request to put money in fails or have a race condition. So that's one way to keep things accurate. In terms of keeping things safe and avoiding cheaters, AppCheck is a huge thing. It makes sure that the only thing that's talking to your Firebase backend services is your app and not somebody's, command line script that they wrote that adds 1 million coins per second to their account. Another thing is security rules. So AppCheck can help, in general, but when somebody is using your app, but using it in a way that you don't want them to, security rules are a really important way to enforce that, if somebody can't add 50 million coins to their account, because that's just not something you would ever do in the normal course of the app. And with security rules, you can test them using the Firebase emulator suite. And finally, all this preventative stuff is great, but you might also want to monitor your database. So maybe have a scheduled cloud function that runs and just checks for all the recent transactions for anything suspicious. So through transaction, app check, security rules, some monitoring, I think you should be all set.
Cool. Wow, that's a lot, but I guess it does, like, for something like this, you want to make sure everything is set up and secure. So that's good. Let's see what else we've got. Oh, I like this question. I knew it would come up. It's about the JavaScript SDK that Jeff mentioned that he liked so much. I knew a question like this would be coming up. So I kind of have a little bit of a secret. I have a direct line to David East, like right into his office. And I kind of pinged him last week and I said, hey, David, so you are the expert on JS SDK. And so we might just like ping you on this. And so I was thinking maybe we could get him like on the show, like right now. What do you guys think?
I love that.
Oh, that'd be awesome. Let's see if we can get him. Let me talk to the directors a second. Hey, how we talked about David East getting online like right now? Do you think we could do it right now?
I'm live. Hey, how did the camera turn on? Hashtag Ask Firebase. I'm here to live, here to answer a question. I'm using the new version of the Firebase JavaScript SDK. Good choice. But I'm not seeing any size reduction benefits. What gives Firebase? This is a great question. If you're using the new version of the JavaScript SDK, version 9, you can potentially see up to an 80% reduction in size from version 8, depending on your use case. And if you're not seeing this, there could be a couple reasons. The first is that you're using the compatibility library. So the compatibility library helps bridge you from version 8 to version 9. But what it does not do is give you tree shaking. And tree shaking is just a fancy term for the removal of unused code in your app. And that is how we have reduced the size. And we've done that through the new module first format of version 9. The compatibility library follows the old format, so you're not going to get that. So once you fully upgraded version 9, you'll see those size savings. Another reason why you might not be able to see the size reduction is you're using browser modules. So browser modules are the native way that you can import code. So script type module, and then you just import, and you usually do that from a fully qualified URL. And that right there, if you're doing that from our CDN, that's a quick and easy way to get started because you don't need a build step. But that gives you everything in the new version 9 API. So you still need to run everything through a tool like Webpack or Rollup to get the tree shaking so it compares the library against your code, reduces the size, and then everything is great. So if you want to learn how to get started with that, then check out a video that I recently did on how to get started with Firebase version 9 and Webpack. And yeah, that was a great question.
Wow. David, thank you so much for that answer. And being willing to jump in on questions like this. I know we have a lot of them for you. So wow, thank you so much, David. Thank you, thank you. But let's see what other questions we have. Maybe we get more about JS SDKs, but hopefully we won't have to bother you anymore about that. So let's see. Okay, our next question. Oh, switching gears completely. So Aaliyah asks, there are lots of exciting new Firebase extensions with API companies, but is it safe to put my API key for Stripe, Twilio, in my extensions config? So all about security, making sure that she's safe. Jeff, do you think you could grab this one?
Yeah, definitely. So first of all, yeah, great job just trying to keep all your API keys safe. I know especially with the new extensions we announced, there's tons of really important integrations that involve money and shipping and stuff like that. And you definitely don't want to leak those API keys. But I'm happy to say that all 9 extensions we launched today all support a new parameter type in extensions called secrets. And secrets use Cloud Secret Manager, which is designed from the ground up to handle API keys and passwords and other sensitive stuff to make sure that while you're configuring an extension, you can confidently put your API key in there and know that it's safe.
Awesome. So if I asked you one more question about extensions, would you be okay?
Let's do it.
All right. So this one, though, is about a configuration file. So they want to know, Iman wants to know, if I want to be able to manage my extensions through a config file, how can I do this?
Yeah, so we have a new CLI command for that actually called ext export. Yeah, and what it does is when you run it, it will check what extensions you already have installed in your project and write those into your firebase.json config file. And that way you could check that into version control or something, and other people can see what extensions you have installed in what version and also deploy themselves. Now, when you run that command, oh, sorry to interrupt.
No, that's awesome. I was just like, that's great.
Yeah, but there's even more. Besides pulling down what extensions you're using, it will also pull down the configuration for them. And that means that it's even easier for other people to deploy the same extension configuration you have. The one exception are the secrets that I mentioned in the last question. You don't want to just pull down those secret values into a plain text file and check it into GitHub. That would be pretty dangerous. So instead, the config file will contain a reference to the secret that you can then go look up yourself later.
So can I ask a question? So Kara was showing that app off in the video. Like that whole entire app was built entirely with extensions. That is open source now, right? So could people pull that down and be able to see what extensions are being used in it and everything like that? Is that something that this config file could be used for?
Yeah, definitely. That's a perfect use case because I think that app uses something like 17 extensions. So that's a great, you don't want to click through and install all those manually yourself. So definitely a great use case for that. And I think we can throw a link up of where the source code for that is.
Oh, great. Yeah, because I think it just went live or something. So it's going to be, that would be really neat. That's so cool. Let's see if we have anything else. I don't know if there's anything. Let's see. Oh, okay. This is a really good one. This is about simulating a test query. So why is there no simulator to test a query? For example, if a written query to retrieve data from Firestore, so that I can confirm if my query result on Firebase only. So let's see. I know that the emulator suite is going to come into this answer somewhere. Jeff, do you want to talk? Since you do a lot with the emulator and the JS SDK, what do you think?
Yeah, definitely. So before we get to the emulators, the Firebase console helps a little bit here. So when you look at your data in Firestore in the Firebase console and you filter a collection, if you look at the bottom of that filter window, there's actually a little thing that shows you what JavaScript query you'd have to write to get the same data back. Now, it doesn't cover every Firestore data query type, but it's a bit of a start. And then the emulator suite is definitely the best way to do this. So you'll need to load some test data into the emulators, but once you do, you can write Firestore queries and see what results come back without actually querying your real database or potentially messing things up if you're trying to write. There's also a request monitor in the emulator suite that lets you see all the Firestore reads and writes coming in and also whether or not they pass security rules. So you can get really fine-grained information about how your Firestore queries work.
That's fantastic. Yeah, that emulator suite is getting more and more and more powerful. I just love it that we're just like building it out so that people can like make sure they're testing their app well before they actually get it out there to developers. All right, I'm going to take the next one because this is something that I actually am very passionate about, and I think others too. Can we contribute on existing Firebase extensions or create new extensions? And the answer to that is definitely yes. You can contribute because extensions are all open source. And so you can see all the source code for every single Firebase extension. And if you wanted to create your own extension, go ahead and apply to join our alpha program because you can get access to all the resources to be able to learn how to build your own extension. So that's definitely something you can do. Contribute to the existing extensions or even build your own. And make sure you take advantage of those types of the open source nature of extensions. The next one, this one's about Cloud Functions. This is actually something that's really comes up a lot, is how can we bypass Cloud Function cold start? Our app uses a couple of Cloud Functions, but because they are not so often called, we have a delay in the response time. And I think, looking at the live chat, it was answered in chat. So maybe we can go ahead and just let someone read in the chat what the answer to this is, but that's a really good question. So make sure you check it out in the live chat. Let's see, what's our next one? The next one is, can Firebase be implemented on GCP? So Google Cloud, can it be implemented on Google Cloud? So here's a really important thing about Firebase and Firebase projects. They are actually Google Cloud projects under the hood. So everything you're doing in Firebase is actually shown over in Google Cloud Console. So you're actually seeing everything mirrored in both places. Now, what Firebase projects do is they turn on specific APIs that are only available if you have a Firebase project. So things like remote config, A/B testing, Crashlytics, things like that are only available if you have like a Firebase project built on top of your Google Cloud project. So everything in Firebase is actually implemented, layered on top of Google Cloud. So that's a really common question we get. But yes, they work very well together. So let's see. Okay, this is a very important question. I love this question that someone asked it. It's about security. Can you explain more about AppCheck and some tips to keep my web app secure? We are always very excited about answering questions like this. Is anyone good with AppCheck on the panel?
Yeah, I mentioned that earlier, so
Yeah.
I'll jump in again and answer this one. So yeah, AppCheck's job is to make sure that only your app can talk to your Firebase services, and not somebody else or some malicious third-party script or something. And it's really easy to set up. There's a call you make on the client, and the Firebase SDK, after you set it up, will send an AppCheck token along with every request, and then the Firebase backend can validate that token. Now, one thing to keep in mind is that AppCheck is one piece of security, right? So AppCheck protects you against things that aren't your app talking to your Firebase backend, but you still want security rules and authentication to guard against malicious user behavior from your app. Let's see, anything else? I think that's it. With authentication, there are different providers. I believe some of the most secure providers are things like sign in with Google or sign in with Apple. But yeah, AppCheck plus auth plus security rules, great way to secure your app.
Yeah, definitely. It's a trifecta there. You got to get going to make sure that you're as secure as possible. Chris, I'm going to toss a question out to you because another question about Crashlytics here, and you are our resident expert on this, is that Leopold, he says, we love your Crashlytics tool. However, we are blind in terms of crash-free session ratio performance for our company. And then his question is, what range makes an app to be excellent, good, average, or bad? Is there any advice we can offer to him about crash-free session ratio performance?
Yeah, I can definitely take that one. Gotta think a little bit because there's not really a great way for me to answer that question without knowing your app's customer base. But I can say that most Crashlytics users aim for that 99% of crash-free users. I can also say that the trend of that graph is more important than the percentage. So when you see a better percentage after a bug fix is released, that's great. But a sudden drop when a new version rolls out could indicate a problem. So a steady or increasing crash-free user percentage over a long period of time should probably be the goal. And speaking of that CFU, crash-free users graph, we recently launched support for Apple platforms running tvOS and macOS to be included in that percentage. And if any issues are being tagged with issue signals that also just launched, that should also help you prioritize which issues you should take on first.
It's amazing. So all these things, I was saying in the beginning that Crashlytics has just been on fire. And so it's like all the little pieces are all built into the different pieces of the dashboard now.
Yeah, like that's what I love about it. They all work so well together that if you're going to the dashboard to solve some issues, like there's going to be multiple things there to help you out.
That's awesome. I just love that all these things have been launched recently. I mean, I work with you on the Crashlytics team, but like sometimes I don't get to see the full picture. So it's really neat to see how you're putting all the pieces together.
Yeah, it's super cool.
Let me ask. Oh, wait. Okay, you just mentioned Apple. I have another question. Maybe you can answer this one too, Chris, because it's about Apple platform support. So does the improved Apple platform support in Firebase mean that I can customize experiences in remote config based on Apple device type?
Gotcha. So yeah, I can take that one. So that's a yes and a no. So
Okay.
you can customize experiences in remote config for Apple platforms, but right now those only include iPhone and iPad models. So far, we are currently working towards providing more advanced filtering in Google Analytics for Apple device types. And this will allow you to use remote config to target different platforms like tvOS and macOS, as well as the device models they support.
Great. Okay, so it's coming up. I like the yes, but no.
Coming soon.
Let's see. Okay, really quick question about AppCheck because I think the answer is pretty quick, hopefully, is I'm thinking about AppCheck on a new project. Should I start using it right away or wait until I have a fair number of users? Jeff, you want to answer this question really fast to wrap up on AppCheck questions?
Yeah.
Maybe we have some more, I don't know, but this one for sure.
Sure. The short answer is the sooner the better. So you can implement AppCheck without actually turning on AppCheck enforcement. So you can set up in your client app, you can set it up so that it always sends the AppCheck token to the Firebase backend. And then in the console, you'll see a graph showing how many requests are coming from something with a valid AppCheck token versus from a version of your app that it thinks is legit, but doesn't have an AppCheck token, so maybe an older version, and then malicious requests. And you can wait until you see that most of your requests are coming from an app version that has AppCheck enabled before you actually turn on AppCheck enforcement in the Firebase console, and that's when things will start getting blocked. So there's nothing wrong with setting it up as soon as possible.
Cool. Let's see. Oh, another remote config question. I might take this one. Can we update remote config via Google Sheets with a script? So I'm pretty passionate about these kind of things. We do have a REST API for remote config for updating configs, and you should be able to just call that right from your app script. So yes, REST API for remote config. Check it out. There are docs for it, and we'll post links to those in the comment section. Let's see. What else do we have? Oh, this one too. This one's a little bit about remote config, but not quite. So the new personalization feature will help me change my UX to optimize for my app goals. And A/B testing also helps me change my UX to optimize for my app goals. What's the difference between these? Okay, so personalization and A/B testing. We had some of the same questions, and so I was talking to Smit Chandel, who is our DRE who works on this feature, and he kind of boiled it down to this. And let me see if I can get it right. It's like personalization uses machine learning to figure out what is going to be the best user experience for a specific user, and it serves it on a per user basis. A/B testing, though, it uses its algorithms to be able to determine what the best experiment variant is going to be more globally on a set of users, and it's going to serve it over a much longer period of time. But he also said there is a tech session about this and about personalization and when to choose it versus A/B testing that is getting posted with Firebase Summit. And so I'm going to check it out, and you should too, to be able to learn more about that question. So let's see. Oh, another thing about functions. Do callable functions automatically implement an exponential backup strategy during network failures?
Yeah, I could take this one. As far as I know, the client SDKs for callable functions don't. But that does sound like a kind of cool feature request. I mean, you could always use a different library that handles exponential backoff, but it would always be nice to have it included in the SDK as well. So maybe reach out to support or ping us on GitHub and see if you can get that added. One thing to keep in mind is that for background triggered functions, if the function itself fails, you can set a configuration so that the function itself will retry until it succeeds. There are some billing implications around that, so be a little careful, but just a note to throw in there while we're talking about retries.
Okay, great. Yeah, billing issues are always a concern for functions, but it's good that we have some help on that. So I think we have only a couple more questions, time for questions. So we'll try to get through the next couple. We're just flying through a ton of questions and they just keep coming. So you guys are awesome out there, like posting your questions and putting them up here. Really fast on another web app kind of question is, can we host a Node.js web app on Firebase? And I think, Jeff, since you work so much on web apps, do you think you could take this one too?
Sure, yeah. So you can serve like an Express app, for example, on Cloud Functions, and you can actually connect that to Firebase hosting too, so that you can get nice API routes and redirects between your static content and your functions content. So you can definitely do that. You can also connect Cloud Run to Firebase hosting, and in that case, you could host, a Next.js server or whatever you like through Firebase.
Cool. So the next question is about web apps, but Chris, you and I were talking about real-time database a couple days ago. Maybe you want to grab this one so it's about real-time database. So the Firebase real-time database works well with web apps, especially those making many small write requests. Does Firebase intend to support the real-time database over the long term? A question we get often, but maybe you can answer this one.
Yeah, definitely can speak to this one. Because indeed, real-time database is definitely being supported for the long haul, which I personally enjoy. Since I've got a few projects reading and writing from RTDB, as I like to shorten it. But thanks for, I love that this question points out the strengths of real-time database. Because like when I set out to make a web app for managing a daily email list, I knew I was going to be able to host the scheduled execution stuff on Firebase, Cloud Functions for Firebase, but didn't quite know how the storage aspect of the email content and the recipients was going to work. But thankfully, there's a great recommendation tool to help folks like me decide which database is best for them. So we're going to provide a link to that as well when this video is finally posted on how to choose between real-time database and Firestore.
Yeah, that tool, that recommender is really helpful. I mean, there's just so many different things that each one can be used for. So I'm glad we're going to post that to bring it up a little bit. All right. It looks like we have time for like one more question. And so really quick, does custom backend support for AppCheck, so AppCheck again, big topic this year, I guess, mean I can use it for other app servers or CDNs? So custom backend support for AppCheck, which is brand new. Jeff, you want to wrap up this with this AppCheck question?
Yeah, we actually have a handy blog post about this, but the answer is yes. You can include the AppCheck token in your request headers, and then you can validate that token in backend services like Apogee or even on the edge in Cloudflare Workers. So yes.
Great. Yeah, so many questions about AppCheck and security. I love that. I know that it's something that's really top of mind for developers. So awesome questions, everyone, for asking all those types of questions. So we're about out of time. Great questions, great answers all around. But before we go, Chris and Jeff, I just want to ask you really fast, because Firebase Summit has gone over so many over weeks this year and today, is there anything that someone should maybe make sure they check out before they like exit the Firebase Summit kind of stuff? Is there anything that you think that people should check out?
Yeah, definitely. One session that I know Kristen just mentioned it at the keynote that I really hope that folks get out to is Crashlytics for Games session. It should be live right now, I believe. It's a technical session of essentially it's for folks looking to make sure that their Unity or NDK apps, Unity or NDK games in particular, are best set up to reach their full stability potential. So highly recommend that one. Crashlytics for games.
That's awesome. Yes, definitely. Jeff, you have anything that people should definitely check out?
Yeah, my vote's for the code labs and pathways. We actually recently open sourced a lot of the text for the code lab so that if something's incorrect or you get stuck and have a question, you can come to GitHub and actually submit a pull request to modify the code lab yourself or ask for some clarification. So I think that's really exciting.
That's awesome. I'm at a +1 code labs. I love code labs. Anything with a code lab is going to be a good time. So definitely that. But for all of you all out there, if you want to learn anything more about anything that we mentioned today in the session, we are going to post this video to our Firebase YouTube channel. And we said several times is we're going to post some of those resources for things that we've talked about in the comment section. So please make sure you check that out. But for now, thank you so much for joining us on this really special edition of #AskFirebase, but live. And we really hope that we will see you all soon. Thanks for joining us. Bye.